Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, episode number 357. Sometimes I remember to say it, sometimes I don't. I don't know if anybody really cares.
357, isn't that that's a gun, right? 357.
Huh? Yeah.
Isn't that a pistol called 357? And there,
Oh, yeah, 357 Magnum.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know my pistols, man.
Yeah, good for you.
It's like I'm as pro 2A as they come, but I have Irish temper, so I myself don't actually participate with the guns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I my daughter and my son-in-law were, I don't know, they were checking their ancestry or whatever, the DNA thing. And when I was visiting them and they were kind of going over some stuff, and I thought, oh, I haven't looked at mine in a while, but I was pretty sure it was roughly half Japanese and the other half was going to be, as I recalled, it was Scottish and maybe some other things, coming from that part of the world. And so then I went back and looked at the darn thing, and it was like, I think 2% was like Swedish, and there was some Irish in there and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, most of it was Scottish on the other half, and I don't think I didn't hit quite 50% on the Japanese side. I think it's saying I was like 44, but close enough for me.
Because there's not a lot of over there. It's pretty pure, like Japan. Japanese marry Japanese.
Yeah. So I guess I could also be called McIrvine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I guess the Japanese in the last week they said no, they're not taking in any immigrants from anywhere else. They're battening down the hatches over there.
Well, okay, but we can start there and get around some of the other things as well. But no. That's why this makes it a free flowing show. We don't have a written script. We don't have teleprompters. We have some bullet points, and then we kind of go and see what we can do during the show. But yeah, I mean, now Japan has been, during its history, one of the most restrictive countries when it comes to immigration.
Right.
They wanted to keep it really as close to just Japanese as possible, though they have let in, I think Brazilians or Peruvians and some others that might have had some Japanese descent, in there, but they have kept a pretty tight lid on it. But they're running into the same problem the rest of the world is, which is that aging population, the younger people that are there in the country are not getting married like they used to, decades ago. And the ones that are getting married are either not having kids or they're having one kid and that's it. And so they're well below the replacement rate to keep the economy, keep the country going. So, one solution to that is to let more people in to try to balance that, try to get some more, build that up a little bit. But, there's, we know, I mean, we've let a bunch of people in there without vetting them. There's risk, if you just let them all in. So Japan is not so huge that I never thought they would ever really open their borders per se, because there's a limited amount of space as where they could go anyway. But there are, at least for now, because of this aging population and things like that, there are homes that basically are free because nobody's lived in them for a long time.
Yeah.
So, cities and towns are, they're dying or dead. But yeah, I don't know.
The schools have closed in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and there's some things also were driven by the meltdown at Fukushima, after the big, wave, the tsunami and everything like that. But still, you can just see that. I mean, South Korea has the same problem. China's, one child policy, which they did away with, but way too late, is coming back to bite them. So you see a lot of these countries. Europe has been going through this for a number of years, and the U.S. is, just kind of, treading water, on the replacement rate issue, So, but I don't know that I'm overly surprised that Japan is doing this. I think I guess I would say on the surface, Sunny, Takaichi, she's a big Trump person, and she's kind of following the lead a little bit about, let's keep these borders tight. I don't know, but that would be my unscientific analysis.
Yeah, it's hard to know like what's involved in their domestic politics over there. So
Yeah, but the country overall seems to be doing better. I mean, they had good 20 plus years of really economic malaise. They've been doing better in recent years, and they're desperate to make sure that they can keep that going. And this is one of the other things that when you're in that parliamentary system, if you don't if the economics aren't working really well, you're gone. It doesn't take much for a government to fall, and Japan's had the same issues with replacing prime ministers as a lot of other countries. So that the jobs are always a little bit tenuous. But I don't know. Takaichi is just because she's a woman, I think it's just a different feel.
yeah,
We'll have to. Well, like I said, we don't really know everything from here as to what's going on over there, and what drives a lot of this at this point.
right. And really patriarchal sort of political system too, far more than us.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That is very true. That is very true. I did want to just give a brief shout out to the weather, which is maybe now getting a little too warm to a certain extent. I mean, it's nice and warm. It's going to be like 83 here. I don't know. It might be close to that where you're living today, but it's nice. I love walking out at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym and having 65 degree temperature. I'm like, no more jacket.
Yeah. I was on the porch this morning at 7 o'clock drinking coffee. I love that. It was beautiful. It was 60, like 61, 62.
Yeah.
Gorgeous morning.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we deserve these days after that brutal stretch of winter that just kind of froze us in place. It's like savor these days, and these are the kinds of days we've been waiting for. So
that's right. We waited a long time for this. We paid dearly this year.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of yard work. I've got guys coming, weather permitting, this Friday to repave my driveway, and so I'm like, oh, I had to do a little bit of gardening kind of thing like that, because a large part of our lawn is made up of zoysia. And
Yeah.
zoysia can be great grass, but it is a tough grass. And what it had done, because we just ignored one of the flower beds by the driveway. It had spread and had hit the driveway. And we know from our old house that what that does is that stuff is so strong, it actually kind of burrows under and it starts to actually buckle your asphalt. So I'm sitting there I'm like, well, I'm paying these guys a lot of money come Friday. And so I'm trying to find anything that's anywhere where those oysters even, close to it, and trying to create a buffer zone temp for now. And I'll try to get the rest of it later and then plant this in the backyard where I need it and see if it'll grow there. So now I'm hoping for a little bit of rain for the transplanting work. But then I realized is that because I was bending down, I was doing a little bit of this stuff. It's like this morning, I'm like, why am I so sore?
Yeah, no kidding.
It wasn't even that long.
It doesn't take long anymore.
No, it doesn't.
My back has been out since September, and so I take a little walk, and my walk is down to about 40% of the size it used to be. But when I get back, it's like that was auto exercise, a whole half mile. Somebody help.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's like things change, man.
It does. It does, and it can change. It can turn on a dime. So,
and then we followed like the coldest winter in 25 years or 23 years with the warmest March. Now, some of it was kind of a statistical anomaly because we had a few days where like the high temperature was at 12:01 a.m. and then the rest of the day was cold. So it was sort of a little bit anomaly, but it was pretty warm. Like you say, in March you're going to have some spring days starting to appear, right? But usually those days are low 70s. We had a few of them to mid to high 80s down here. I think in town, like National Airport, they're saying it's going to be 88 or so today. So,
wow.
That's pretty warm for this early in the year.
Yeah, that's saying something.
But then some storms are going to pop. So
yeah, well, like I said, I need a little bit of rain to go onto the transplanted grass, so hopefully that'll take root a little bit better, because I'm too lazy to go out and get the hose and water it. So
yeah, I'm curious about the zoysia, because that's a warm weather grass. This is about as far north as it'll grow. How that comes back from this winter,
Oh, it's coming back. It's
not a problem, Don says.
It hasn't been a problem. It hasn't, is
it green at all yet?
We're seeing green shoots, and everything like that. So, it won't be much longer before it should probably green out and come out of complete dormancy like that. So, yeah, I mean, because it's still probably a little bit early because the weather's been cold. Yeah. But as it consistently stays warmer, I think that'll take care of it. So, that actually in the dormant stage, I kind of like it because it helps me track where it really is, so I can for the portions I need to dig up. If it turns green and starts looking like the other grass for me, it's like, okay, wait a minute, is this oysters or something else? Right. So, but it's it's got it's easily covering half my lawn, if not a little bit more than that. So I like it for general low maintenance. And everything. Spongy. Yeah, it's kind of, as a kid I thought it was always kind of fun. Yeah. That's all, and that's that's something my father planted at his old house, and so this is the third house that I've lived in. Well, maybe even the fourth. Maybe when I was a small child, I think they might have had it there too. So it could be 4 houses in a row where we had zoysia as our main component to our lawn and everything. Not everybody knows what that is. So sometimes people think your grass has died, and then they say, then they see it green out the next summer, and they're like, "How did that happen?"
Right. It goes dormant and it goes brown, like earlier than most kinds of grass.
Right. It does.
But when in the summer, it's pretty, and like you say, it's pretty easy to take care of. A lot of golf courses have it, especially further south.
Right. Right. All right. A couple more things before we hit the bigger topics. So it's April Fool's Day. I don't really do anything for April Fool's Day.
I don't either. It's dangerous.
Yeah. I'm not ingenious enough to try to do that, but I do remember the early days of the internet Facebook era, where April Fools was a day where a lot of people I knew announced their engagements, right?
Yeah.
And you weren't even thinking in that mode. You're like, oh, congratulations, that's great. And then you find out they were just yanking your chain.
Yeah.
And that lasted for years. I mean, it lessened over time as people caught on. But I'm like, after a while, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to wait till April 2nd.
Yeah, that's right. You're not fooling me again.
Yeah.
787.
Basically, don't get married. Don't get engaged on April 1st or anything like that, because people won't really know if it's really true.
Yeah, how does the girl know? Like, will you marry me? April Fools.
Yeah, if you're cognizant of that. But today also is, I had to pull this one out. I like this one. This is National 1 Cent Day. I throw that out here only because we're not making pennies anymore.
We're not making pennies anymore. They're going to have to eventually make everything to a nickel, because we will run out of them.
Yeah, and I don't know. If you go to the bank, you see the bank notices about it. You see this at stores now more and more and more about, there's a penny shortage because they're not being minted anymore. Transactions are being rounded up or down or whatever, and things like that. But there hasn't really. I haven't seen like a big national outcry. People, like everything else, I think they get used to it. Okay, this is a change. A lot of people don't use cash anyway.
Right.
So how many people does it affect anymore in this life?
That's right. That's right. So, does it affect many people? It's like the post office. We were talking about this. If the post office went to 3 days a week, who would notice? How There's a few people, oh, get my medicine, or but very few people are actually relying on the post office for life-saving medicine. At least I would hope,
Yeah, I mean, look, in the old days, senior citizens, they needed it for things like that, for medicine, also for their Social Security checks. But I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure it's a pretty large percentage, is all done by direct deposit now.
Right.
It's safer for the government. It's better for the government, and it's safer for the recipient. So then things don't get stolen in the mail. So,
I think direct deposit is one of the most pro-consumer innovations to come along in my lifetime.
Yeah, no,
I mean, like I can remember, I got paid on Tuesday. Like, I don't know why, but that's when they paid us. So every other Tuesday when I first started working for the newspaper in Shreveport. And so you go to the bank and deposit your check. And, since it was after hours, right, because they didn't give you the check till the afternoon, then it's Wednesday's business, which means it would be on your account by Friday, right? So you didn't really get paid till Friday. You didn't really have money to spend until Friday. And now it's just, bing, there it is. I mean, that was a huge thing for consumers.
Yeah, I mean, even though sometimes there's an issue or two with electronic payments between individuals through a Zelle or a Venmo or things like that, by and large, I mean, it works. Those systems work pretty well because you send money, you receive money, and it's there, and then you can transfer it to your bank account. And
the mistakes, like there are, what glitches there are easily noticed, easily corrected. The documentation's all there.
Yeah, I mean, right. And I will say the word of warning is that generally, if you make a mistake using something like Zelle and Venmo and stuff like that, tough luck, because that's an electronic transaction. They send it off, and if you pick the wrong person, that there's the other person, they don't have the obligation to return it at all, because it just kind of hits them and whatever. And the banks are, the intermediaries are just saying, we're just moving money from A to B. We are not your banker per se. We're not there's no relationship where we can go back and grab that money and reverse that transaction. So yeah, you have to be careful. But people love those systems of just being able to pay each other without having to have cash in their pocket and stuff like that. And so anyway, yeah. All right. So moving on, the war in Iran, now into its 5th week. I think the original timeline was somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. So we're still in that. And President Trump is going to address the nation tonight at 9:00. He's been talking here the last couple of days about getting this thing wrapped up. The stock market has reacted positively. Oil has been dropping a little bit as a result. So those are things. I'm not sure exactly where we are with all this. I mean, we did knock out a bunch of their leaders, but we haven't. I don't see that we have achieved the regime change per se that we thought we would get out of this. And maybe it's a little trickier than Trump and his advisors thought it was going to be. So I'll be curious to see what he says tonight. But I mean, I don't fault him for going and doing what he did.
So I think what he's going to talk about tonight is they do have a partner. They have figured out a partner, and so they could do a lot of stuff with this partner now that they couldn't do before when they were still trying to sort out who was the partner. So I think that's part of what they're going to talk about. I could be wrong. I'm speculating just based on what I'm seeing about all this stuff. And I think that, his plan, I think his timeline's still pretty much in order, right? In terms of another week or two or so, he plans to start getting out of there. So, I think that's, and part of that was finding the person to agree to it. And I think they found the person. And I don't think, if that person has to put his popularity up against the mullahs, that the mullahs will prevail. I think the Iranian people have seen the advantages of not being run by the mullahs and are ready to move forward with that. So, I think it's one of those deals. He tried to, I think their original plan was to get the Shah's son installed quickly. And, it's the same thing with Venezuela, they found out their champion of liberty was not up to it. Right, the person they wanted to put in charge of Venezuela, it didn't really have the support of Venezuelans, and so they basically resorted to someone who was part of the previous regime but agreed to run it like we want it run. And I think that's kind of that kind of outcome is what we're headed for here. We found somebody who will run it like we want it run.
Yeah, I mean, is that a decent solution here? I mean, considering what we've put into this and everything like that,
all we wanted was rid of the mullahs, rid of the terror threat, rid of the possibility of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And I think the missiles there, if you get the right change in leadership, then the missiles won't be a problem. So, and these are tricky people. This is not, we're not running roughshod over a third world country here. We're taking on one of the 3 or 4 top military powers in the world.
So now the Houthis are involved as well. Are they, I mean,
not for long. I promise you that the Houthis will not be involved for long. The one interesting development, though, and I think that we need to make an example out of this, is that Russians seem to be helping the Iranians with targeting information and stuff like that. They blew up one of the AWACS planes, so they knew exactly which runway to hit, and they don't really have the capability of doing that. That had to have come from the Russians. So, we need to ask them, this is the way you want to play it, we can make some other stuff happen for you that will not be as good. So, it holds them to account, right? They don't need to be participating in this.
All right. So do you think that, I mean, if Trump has found somebody to partner with us on this, I mean, I know he made some statements about, threatening to leave NATO and stuff like that, and all of that. But do you think that they'll be able to figure out a strategy for getting the Strait of Hormuz opened and getting the oil flowing again?
If we find somebody to negotiate with, yeah, it'll be like Venezuela. Venezuela is running exactly like we run right now. So I think that's where you would be headed if he has a partner.
So I'm going to throw this out too. It's not on the list, but on Cuba, which has been starving for oil, I guess we allowed a Russian tanker to come through and deliver some oil, kind of on a humanitarian basis. The only which I'm okay with on the if it really is humanitarian, but the government is so corrupt. How do we know that this oil is going to go and really help the people, and that the government isn't going to somehow do something just to serve their own needs, and the people are still going to be suffering?
So what if they do?
Yeah.
Right? Probably it's going to be corrupt, and then the people will be even madder at the government. I mean, if I'm them, I'm taking that oil and I'm getting the power turned back on for however long I can get it turned back on. Right. All right. There's no, they essentially got Cuba to the point where there was no power in the country. Like everything was like we were running it off generators from our U.S. embassy. It was being run off generators powered by gasoline. The supply was dwindling. We were going to have to take more gasoline into Cuba ourselves to power our own embassy. So, the pressure on all that will kind of back off a few days and let them think what they're doing. But, I think the Cubans have the message that, we're not going to stop until there's regime change there too. So, Trump's ending a bunch of 50, 60-year-old problems, in a matter of weeks. It's not going to be totally clean deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the questions that comes up in my mind is just that if you let the one tanker in with oil for these reasons, can you deny others that will try to say, well, we want to deliver oil for humanitarian reasons as well? Where's the limit? What's the
right? That's right. If you do it once, are you on the hook for continuing to do it? And I don't know what their strategy is there. My suspicion is that they must be close to a deal to have done this, right? So if you give us 2 more weeks, give us a little room to work here, that this can work out. And if it doesn't work out, then let them run out and press it and make it happen.
Yeah, I'm hoping that part of this is just with our administration, basically telling those in charge in Cuba that look, okay, we're doing this, because we don't we don't want the hospitals and other things that are vital, we don't want people to die as a result of not having oil. Uh, but on the other hand, don't think that this is something that we're going to continue doing. If you don't come around to our way of thinking, you have got to make some dramatic change. And here's our terms. You accept these terms, and you know that not only will the power be up and running, but you know other infrastructural changes will be able to take place over a period of time that will dramatically change Cuba as as a
Right.
country. So
Right.
yeah,
Cuba stands not to do nothing but gain from this.
yeah, no, I mean, just yeah, it's it, the Trump has done some interesting things here by going after these countries. I mean, he does realize that he's got one term to try to go and reshape the world in a lot of ways, and he's gone at it with a lot of gusto, and shocking the world that these things have happened. But I think by and large, he's made mostly the right choices. I still wish that he would not say as much on True Social sometimes as he does, but in general, we're moving in the right direction overall. Even though, like you said, in Venezuela couldn't get the person that we thought we would put in there because really wasn't up to snuff. So that's part of this thing too. Is that, I mean, I think if you're going to go in there and do this in the country, you should really, if you really want to do this, you should have a person ready to go in place, vetted. Can you do that? I don't know if you can do that, but you got
See,
got
to
to.
me, it's like it's got to be organic. And if we start saying, we're removing your president and this is your new leader, right? Then it's a referendum on us, right? And that person is like, well, who are they to tell us who runs our country, right? All we're said is you can't have the last guy, right? The last guy, he's got to go,
Yeah,
but who you embrace is you. So I understand what you're saying, that like it sure would be easier if these things, the whole script was written and we didn't just get in there and allow chance to take over. But I think that, the people, if we're going to say we're for popular sovereignty and we're decapitating your leader, then, you kind of got to allow the people to decide what comes next.
yeah. I mean, or we could have a pool of people that'll to be considered, and let the people vote on this
Well,
group
I
or
think
something.
that's essentially what happened in Venezuela. Is they said, okay, if they don't accept this lady, our fallback position will be we'll get on the vice president lady and we'll make sure that she does the right things, which is what has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I mean, Venezuela's been kind of pushed to the background, but I don't hear a lot about Delcy Rodriguez and her loyalty to Maduro and all these things at this
Right. Her
point.
first few days, she was pretty defiant and running her mouth, and you hadn't heard anything about that since.
Right.
So I think Delcy got read the riot act in a way that
Yeah.
she has come to really understand and embrace.
Yeah, you want to stay in power, you want to stay alive. This is it,
Yeah, it can be easily done. It can also be easily undone.
All right. So all these actions have led to, once again, the No Kings demonstrations across the country. Now, to be honest, I had completely forgotten about them from last year, hadn't really thought about it. And then my social media feed, when I look at it, all this stuff pops up from people. One of the things that drives me crazy, and I think I've said this in the past, is just that people that I personally know, that are smart people that have been sucked in by the left on this No Kings thing.
It's like what? Like what does it even mean? And it's just like just admit you hate Trump and you're not rational and you can't think about Trump rationally. Just say it. Just live it. They don't have to go to these marches anymore. Right? It's just for people who irrationally hate Trump. They're like the message, no kings. Okay, well, we don't really have a king. In fact, we never had a king. What else are you complaining about? Whatever he's done is through the processes of the law, right? When the court tells him to stop something, he stops it, right? He goes in appeals and he wins on appeal and he starts back, but he's following court orders. Every time they've had any of this stuff comes up, because the right, the people go nuts on Twitter, just defy the court. That's enough. There's too much judicial activism. And Trump just appeals it and wins, right? Because he knew what he was doing when he started. And what has happened is, it's not been Trump who's been exposed. It's been the judiciary, right? You have these judges that, they're making decisions, because they hate Trump, and it couldn't be any more clear, and they can't really deny it, right? And that's just the way this thing has gone down. So, I think it's pretty interesting. I think he's in a pretty good shape vis-a-vis the courts. I guess today he's actually at the Supreme Court. He's gone over to watch the oral arguments in the birthright citizenship case. So
yeah, that in and of itself. I mean, he intimated that he was going to go. I mean, I haven't seen the latest news report as to whether or not he did.
Yeah,
go
he did. He's there.
He's there now. Yeah. He's not exerting any political pressure at all on those Supreme Court justices.
I mean, there's no crime against him going, right?
No, there isn't.
I mean, you can sit there and stare at him, all he wants. It's unlikely to have the effect he intends, right? Because they're a proudly independent branch of government themselves. So, I don't think anybody's going to say, well, I was going to vote against him, but, now that he's sitting there glowering at me all day, I'm changing my mind. I don't really see that happening. Also, and I try to find this out from Cato, but they're so up in their problems that they can't answer this question. But how many people are we talking about here? The birthright citizenship. How many people really come across the border, illegal aliens, in their 8th or 9th month of pregnancy, have a baby here so the baby can be a U.S. citizen? Are we talking about 1 million people, 1,000, 100,000, 2,000? I don't know. I don't really have a feel for that. It's like the Dreamers. There's about 765,000 Dreamers or something like that, 800,000. Can't we come up with something for 600, 800,000? This other 800,000 people, right? So you don't get a path to citizenship, or you get a path to something, something, right? Something, right? We're going to go to court and fight all this stuff. And I just don't think we're I don't know how productive all that is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very pragmatic view, which is what I prefer. This is part of the problem that we're in these days, is that there's just these very polarized sides, and the pragmatism has really gone by the wayside in terms of, can we find a middle ground for things that are not huge problems? I mean, if we're talking 10 million people, that's one thing, but I think the numbers are relatively small. And you find you carve something out and you figure this out, because those numbers compared to our population are tiny. They're not going to have a humongous effect on really much of anything, as far as I'm concerned. They're not really, you're not going to tax our services that much, not, if it's 500,000 people, you're not going to tax our services as much as the fact of 11 million people or something like that,
right,
trying to take advantage of our welfare system or something like that. So I don't know that you can just be so strident and say it's kind of an all or nothing deal.
It's people who didn't know the rules or understood the rules to be different than they are, right?
Yeah.
So it's not, ignorance of the crime is not a defense. I understand that. But you are talking about people, from, poor young pregnant girl from Guatemala, what does she really know about, the court system in the U.S. and what it has ruled on all these things and the definition of all these legal terms, right? All she knows is a very good thing could happen if she could manage to pull off getting there and having the baby, right? So, these are, I want to catch the criminals. And I think, if you immigrate here illegally, that's a crime and we can deport you for it, right? But the baby, like, is the baby a citizen or not? Maybe it is. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Like, there are two sides who are equally sure that they are completely correct about this. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to a guy last week, and he was from Colombia, and he was brought here to the United States when he was a small child, and so and he got shuttled between relatives in Florida and New York, as and for for a good portion of his life, he actually, I think a lot of people are like this. They really, they grew up as a kid here. They just assume they're like everybody else, except they speak maybe they speak a second language. Their skin color's a little bit different or whatever. And then as he got to be an adult, and he wanted to work and go into business and do things like that, he ran into a problem because he wasn't legal. They and but he was in Florida at the time, and somehow got Elena Rose Layton. She somehow they've contacted her office, and she managed to grease the wheels or do whatever so that he could get a social security number and whatever, and so he was able to not just work, but he actually set up his own floral business and things like that. But he was just saying, it's like, I was, when I came here when I was 5 years old, I had no idea.
Right.
Nobody says anything to you at that point in time, and he wasn't trying. When he got to be an adult, he wasn't trying to skirt the law. And it's just like, I need to have my ducks in a row in order to do these, to work legally, to run a business legally. How am I going to do this?
Right.
He just, he was I think he was apolitical. He just wanted to know what he could do to raise his family and build a business in the United States. So, there are people who actually make contributions to our society. We can't be such that every illegal is going to be a negative factor. There's just, there are checks and balances and things that we need to do. That Trump has really turned the spigot off of just this wave coming over the border. Birthright citizenship. I don't know if that's a hill you want to die on.
That's my point. It's like that. I don't know if that's a hill I want to die on.
Yeah.
But I don't know the numbers. Like, if maybe it is 10 million.
Until we know the numbers, we're kind of saying that this is a hill you don't want to die. But maybe the numbers are bigger than we think, and it's something we need to look at.
Then you would, it'd be worthwhile to do it. And I think that we should. It is a fair point that we should not stop making. That coming into the country without being authorized is illegal, and the punishment. Right. Includes, it's not the only thing you get, but includes, we put you back out of the country. We deport you. Right. And I think, like, everybody, and we've got the border closed now. And we always said, Krauthammer used to write about this all the time. And he would say, there's three aspects to border immigration policy. There's, what do you do with the people already here? What do you do with people who want to come in legally? And what do you do about the border? Right. And he said, if you close the border, then you can deal with the other two in a rather sane manner, right? You don't have the pressure of zillions more pouring in every day, right? Then you can sit down and have an intelligent conversation about the rest of it. And I still think we can. I still think that's right, but it has not happened yet.
Yeah, we have to do something about this at some point in time. But
it may not be that far, though, because I think you're even starting to see a few Democrats say, yeah, we can't win with what we were saying about immigration. That's not a winning formula for us. Just open borders. We're not going back to the Biden era. You have some in their party absolutely want to do that, but most of them are like, ooh, I don't know. That costs us a lot of votes.
Yeah, I think Karl Rove pointed out this. Just he thought it was remarkable that despite the fact that Trump's poll numbers were down, that he was still above the Democrats. Just kept sinking more.
Right.
The opportunity for them for the midterms and beyond, is trying to find something that they can stick on. But it all seems to come back to, we hate Trump. Whatever he does is wrong, and they haven't been able to find an effective strategy. This whole thing with TSA, it's really the Democrats' fault. They keep holding it up. The Republicans have been willing to compromise and say, no, let's pay the TSA agents. Let's get, make sure we get the call out rate down. We go back to a more normal thing, so the lines don't, stretch out all the way outside the terminals and all of these things. But the Democrats, they're trying to blame the Republicans for this. the Democrats are all hung up on all this ICE funding and stuff like that, but they need to get a life here. It's like, look, you're some of your bread and butter people here, your core voters are TSA agents. I mean, they're low paid employees. They're the kind of the blue collar people, and you're killing them. By
right.
not.
The other thing is like that's part of it. But the other part is in these cities, right? I mean, Democrats, like for instance, Illinois, how Chicago votes is how Illinois is going to vote. The whole rest of the state cannot counteract Chicago, right? Chicago is where it happens. So, so Chicago, all the black people who voted for Democrats are now looking at this and saying, they seem to care more about Hispanics, illegals, than they do about us. Right. The policy making is, we thought we had bought Friends for Life, and, it turns out that we're now not first in line anymore, or even second in line. So, the strong coalition of urban minority groups that they've always relied on is hollowing out in fairly rapid fashion. I guess, the two leaders in the race for California governor, they have that jungle primary. So the top two will be the only two considered are Republicans, right? Because the Democrats are fractured among themselves, and their candidates are associated with, irresponsible welfare, irresponsible immigration policy.
Yeah, I mean the mere fact, thought that California could elect a Republican governor after all this time is quite shocking, because
it really is. And the thing about it is like, the problem would be easily solved if Swalwell or Katie Porter said, okay, I'm not going to win, and got out. Right. But both of them are two huge egos, and they can't make themselves do it. So, I mean, they may take the party right down with them.
I saw something, I didn't read it, but I saw some brief headline about did Swalwell make a quick exit out of a CNN interview or something like that when they brought up the Fang?
Yeah, that's right. Because they're whatever. Tulsi Gabbard has some files about Fang that she wants to release, and he's desperate that this not come out.
Yeah. Okay. So look, if you're so, I realize Swalwell's got a huge ego, but it's like that whole thing is still pretty murky, and it's like
right.
You're running for governor. It's like you'll have to address that somehow, sometime, probably. I mean, it's not like you can just keep this in a box all the time. It's really going to be hard, and so that's a big skeleton in his closet. Realistic. I guess maybe he was counting on the jungle primary to kind of vault him up there, but instead it may keep him out as a result because of Porter. I mean, they're going to fight for the votes.
That's right. The other thing is they're locked in on is the polling shows right now that it's almost impossible if she runs. It will be almost impossible for the Democrats to stop Kamala from being the nominee. So they're stuck with her.
That's just. Well, I mean, she'll see an opportunity, right?
Yeah. I mean, she's obviously been thinking about it, and all their poll results that are coming back are saying that she should.
I'm just curious though. Yeah. So I just hear the quick headline from the LA Times from somebody from the Voices section. Not even the threat of two Republicans facing off for governor will drive Dems out of the race.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
they can't stop. They can't help themselves.
Yeah, that's Swalwell. I would love to see him go down in ignominious defeat, and I have no love lost for Katie Porter either. So,
yeah, it's hard to figure which one would be more fun to watch them lose. I'm just not sure.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, and then these states keep electing these governors, and then they have the legislature under control. And then they run roughshod over the people, more taxes, more regulation, and then they wind up with less business and fewer people, as they flee the state, which kind of will lead me to this part, but we'll go back and forth a little bit here, which, where we have Washington State, they just enacted a millionaire's tax. It won't take effect until 2028, but they have no income tax, right? They have no state income tax. But if you're a millionaire, hitting a certain threshold, you're going to be taxed. Well, this always makes me wonder how dumb can these people be? Because just look around the country. Every time a Democrat governor has done this, Maryland is an example.
Yeah.
Is that what people that are in that income bracket, they leave.
Yeah, they can move. They're the ones who can move. They don't have to live anywhere.
No,
right?
Yeah,
there's houses in their price range in every location in the country.
Yeah.
Or below, right? The other thing is like, I don't know if you saw this, but Marshawn Lynch, the running back, the former Seahawks Super Bowl hero, their first time they won the Super Bowl, beast mode. He's come out and said, well, the Seahawks won it this year. And he's like, you better enjoy it, because if this tax stays, we won't be winning any more of them, because athletes will not sign here if they have to pay that tax.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's just, it will become a city. It'll affect the football team, affect every single pro sports team in that city. Is that
you're trying to get NBA, that's like, it reminds me of, like, in Louisiana, they made a law that if you could, black people, this is back in the early 60s, black people could not play in professional sports events in Louisiana. So like I did a story one time about Willie McCovey. Like, he came to Shreveport as a member of the Dallas Fort Worth Stars, who played in the stadium that became the first Rangers stadium when the Dallas area got the Rangers. And he was not allowed to play in Shreveport because he's black. And so he came back in the late 60s as a member of the Giants. And that law died when the Louisiana was trying to get the Saints. And the NFL said, we're not playing, we're not doing that. You got to fix that. So they repealed the law to get the Saints, because, Louisiana, one thing they love more than their racism is their football. So so he came back and he hit, two of the longest home runs I've ever seen. He was very mad at the baseball that day. And, I wrote about it years later, and got to talk to him about it and whatnot. But yeah, so, this is the same kind of deal. It's like, you're basically saying, we can't have athletes. We can't have anybody who's uniquely successful. We don't want success in our state. So, I think Washington, I think they are there. There was a measure in the legislature to create an income tax for the first time ever. And I think it passed, but the governor said no.
Yeah. So the thing too is just that you have, it's not just the athletes, but, Washington State, where is Microsoft headquartered, right?
Not anymore, though. I mean, it's moving out.
Yeah.
Starbucks is moving out. All their big corporate presences are moving out. Boeing has moved out,
But as you said before, too, is that, because, I mean, one of the things the pandemic did is that, it altered working, workspaces, right? Where we learned that we don't have to work and live in the same place anymore necessarily. And so, a lot of these Wall Street types that run hedge funds and all these kinds of things, like, they had put their offices in major metropolitan cities, which also meant high tax cities,
right?
Highly regulated cities. But, they look at this and they're saying, like, no more. I mean, Citadel Holdings, they went from Chicago to Florida and, building a huge, building everything out down there, because it's a tax-friendly, business-friendly state. And so, Chicago, you did it, I mean, LA, you've done it, Governor Newsom, your people have driven people out of California. That's why you're losing representatives, in the House, because you're shrinking. You've chased people away. People have moved, to Texas. They moved to Florida. They've just found other places. They've gone to Utah and Idaho and whatever, where they can be and operate just fine,
right?
And everything.
Yeah, I mean, you realize that California is basically going to give 4 congressional seats to Texas in the next redistricting, the next census, right? They're going to, just 4 seats are going to move from California to Texas because of this. And that's not even the state that people are trying to get out of the most. You know what state it is? In Massachusetts, right? They're very proud of how much they tax and stick it to everybody and all that kind of stuff. And they lost more population in the last 2 years than any other state.
Yeah, well, Taxachusetts wears the name well.
Yep.
So it's never to be forgotten that way.
Those little laboratories of democracy demonstrating that what economic policy looks like, right?
That's right. That's true. That is true. All right. So we had yesterday was National Farm Workers Day. So the Cesar Chavez has gone away. He's disappeared. Yeah. Never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again, or heard from, or heard about.
Yeah. So I just love the political whitewashing on the part of the liberals and at least labor union people about, it's like just trying to scramble and rename things and just take his name off of things wherever they can, as if he never existed and they had no relationship to him whatsoever at all. And it may be just better for them to leave it as National Farm Workers Day from this point on, right? I mean,
well, farm workers are farm workers.
Farm workers. That's
and that may be a vehicle by which they sort of disassociate themselves from it. Hey, we're having a Farm Workers Day. We never even mentioned it.
Well, I think that is it just continues to show the problem sometimes when you name buildings, schools, whatever, public buildings after people. And then later on, 50 years, 100 years later, something comes out, whether or not it's true or not, just the accusation is enough, right? And to me, right. And then the next thing you know, they have to remove the name. I mean, Virginia's done that with a bunch of high schools, I think, and Maryland has Maryland got very PC, with their schools about not offending Native Americans and anybody. You can't have a team named, school mascot can no longer be an Indian and all these kinds of things. So, any association like that, they've just neutered all of this stuff. So you have to figure out who is, if you're going to name something after a person, you've got to find somebody who is just pure as the driven snow, that there will be no way for the next several hundred years they could be attached to any scandal.
Yeah. It's like, it's like people are human too,
Right. No, I mean, it's part of the human conditions, but we all have frailties.
Yeah.
We are not perfect. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I mean, my wife and I mean, we've put the money together and we've set up a scholarship in Spencer's name at BYU. As far as I know, Spencer was a model citizen and everything like that. But is it possible that somebody could accuse him of doing something or in his short life? I guess so. I mean, same thing for my father, which we set up something 22 years ago at BYU for journalism. I guess you could say and do that, but then it would make the school scramble. But then it becomes this issue where the families donated money for this specific purpose. It's like,
that's right. So it's University of Richmond Law School, right, was named for T.C. Williams. So T.C. Williams, so was the City High School in Alexandria. Alexandria is now called Alexandria City High School. It was called T.C. Williams, named for a family that was in Alexandria, a guy, state superintendent of education, wealthy guy, donated a bunch of money to start the University of Richmond Law School, and they call it the T.C. Williams Law School. And so they said, and they changed the name of the school in Alexandria. The University of Richmond was like, well, why are we leaving this racist name on our school, right? So they went to take it off, and the family is like, sure, no problem, but we're going to need the money back that you took, to keep naming it for him. And so then they decided that it's okay to call it the T.C. Williams Law School.
In some cases, it talks.
It talks. It sure does.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. So there are just, I don't know. It's when you try to rewrite history in this sense. It's like all of a sudden you go back, 100 or 200 years, and you say, you're saying, oh, well, this person owned a slave, owned one slave. can we get an idea about the conditions back then and exactly what the culture was like? Exactly, did they mistreat these people? I mean, but just certain associations is all you need, and they want to scrub everything away. And like, I have a hard time with all of that in general. So, all right, we're running out of time here. Just a few other things at the end here. So, California jury has ruled against Meta and Alphabet, Google about basically said sections, was it 230 doesn't apply, that and personal responsibility apparently doesn't apply, that you have concocted, you've made an addictive product, and this woman who was a girl, who said she was addicted to like YouTube and all this stuff since she was 6, deserves $6 million. Now, $6 million to these companies is nothing, but and there's been several news reports about, is this the big tobacco moment for social media for mega techs and things like that? It's like, look, this is a trial lawyers are probably dancing around about this, but I'm sorry, it's like, I don't know how many cases you can get through that basically throw out the personal responsibility phase. It's like, where were the parents? What how do you get that addicted? I mean, look, I am not going to be a big defender of social media, because I know that there are some things that happen that people do get somewhat addicted to. They can't tear themselves away. But those people there's ways. There's got to be just because you got so tied up in this that you want to blame these companies. I don't even blame big tobacco, in general, for things like that. Like, they created a product. There was people who willingly smoked cigarettes, and they dealt with the consequences of that. But all those millions and billions of dollars that I still am somewhat dubious as to exactly what happened to that money in the end anyway.
Right.
To me, it's a big shake.
One thing, you're talking about the tobacco, right? They never proved that tobacco causes cancer. All they proved was that you're more likely to get it if you smoke, right? And like my mom told me, who did smoke, that if you're putting smoke in your body, that's not good. You don't need a scientist to tell you that, right? You should be able to figure that out yourself. But it was, people took it upon themselves. They knew more or less the risk, right? And that was nonsense. And this is, I think, a dangerous kind of incursion into free speech, right? And I think that the people going around wanting 230 repeal better be careful what they ask for too, because what Section 230 says is that it allows the social media companies to be, they're just a platform. I put my comment on there, you put your comment on there. They're not going through and saying, we will allow this comment and not that comment. So they're not editors, right? If you run a newspaper, you're editing the newspaper. You're deciding what goes in it and what doesn't go in it. And, if there's libel or whatever that flows from that, you're responsible for it. Okay. But in this, it's like, it's me and you commenting, and Elon Musk is not responsible for what me and you say on Twitter. Right. So if you say, okay, we're changing that, and Elon Musk is responsible for what you say on Twitter, then you cannot argue when Elon Musk or Meta or whoever censors you, right? It's like, hey, if I'm going to get sued for it, then I'm going to control what gets said. You're not going to be less free on that one. You're going to be more free on that. You're going to be a lot less free. You're going to be getting told what you can say in much more specific terms than you ever have been before.
Yeah, look, and I understand certain things about this. I mean, they talk about the dopamine hit for people because they want to see the likes and all this kind of stuff, and that kind of gets them to this. Like it's, I mean, I throw up a bunch of pictures and do a few things here and there. I'm not nowhere as active in general on Facebook like I was when I was working at AIM and using it as a way to push more information out the door, and Twitter and stuff like that. And Yeah, is there some affirmation when people like your post, or they retweet a post on Twitter X, or things like that, or they share a post on Instagram or Facebook? Yeah, but it's it's not. I don't base my self-esteem on social media.
Right. Right.
And this seems to be what's happening here, is that these people, that's what they were doing. It's like, you have got a bigger problem if that's what it is. If you're looking to these platforms to base how your affirmation of whether or not you are a human being that deserves to live or whatever, you've got a bigger problem. And it is not the fault of Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. It's not, not the fault of YouTube and Alphabet and anything like that at all. You if you cannot take personal responsibility, and she's an adult now. I mean, she's 20 years old. So come on, you cannot. You've got to be better than this. But people see the money, and trial lawyers see the money, so they're going. They're testing these theories.
Right.
They may win a few more cases, but I think on appeal, I don't think they're going to get held up.
No, I don't think it will either. I think that was bad law.
Yeah. All right. Couple more things. So Chicago Bulls released this player named Jayden Ivey after he went on a kind of a tirade about gays and the NBA's Pride Month and everything like that. Now, I mean, I think he's not even playing right now. I think he's just on rehab.
They shut him down for the season. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's like conduct detrimental to the team, but he's become kind of a mini call celeb because he's spoken out. About this.
He's saying, the league is glorifying gay behavior, right, which is sinful, and he wants people to know that he doesn't think that's righteous, that's unrighteous. I don't know what their rules are, and like what's in the CBA, and had the Bulls told him in the past to cease and desist. I mean, to me, it falls a lot into the Kaepernick category, right? Right. So if the owners told Kaepernick to stop, okay, and he said, I'm going to defy your order to stop and keep going, and that's when he got in trouble. That's when he got released, right? I don't know if this guy had been warned of anything, or if this all came by surprise to him, or whatever. But I don't think the Bulls handled it right. I don't think that they. The way the rules work in the NBA, I doubt that they could be legally bound to take him back or whatever. But it does look like that what he got punished for was being, was having a pro-Christian point of view, right? They let, it is, if they're going to say, we don't let our people talk about politics, then, Steve Kerr's got to go because he talks about politics all the time. So does the guy down in San Antonio. So, they're mouthing off constantly. So is it which politics you say, or is it talking about politics?
Yeah. And Kerr and Pop are much bigger figures than Jayden Ivey.
Commies, and it's like, hey, I ignore it because, I'm not coming to you for political advice. I'm coming to you for basketball. I want to see what you do in basketball.
Right.
So, but if we're going to say that this guy's views, we kick him out of the league, then Kerr has to go because he's nakedly, brazenly, antagonistically political on the regular.
Right. All right, and we'll end the show with the Final Four is now set
on both sides. Yeah,
on both sides. I think there'll be some good games here leading up to the finals, and I don't know. I mean, I went ahead and ran several brackets. So I've got Arizona, and I've got on some, and I've got Michigan. So at least one of my brackets will get a winner.
Oh, that's good. All of mine are wiped out, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Duke last week. How we thought it was going to, that end of that game, boy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, threw the pass into the guy's arms. As they panicked, right? And and somebody was, I guess, Jay Williams or somebody was showing on TV the two guys who were the best free throw shooters, which is who you would want to catch the ball there, ran away. They took off down court. So it was left to like a big to come back and get the ball. And then he threw it and got it blocked. And, so I mean, it was a deal, young people made a young mistake in his battle. But my question is, if we fire Hubert, then why shouldn't we fire Shire? I mean, he's choking just as bad, and his rosters are even better, right? I mean, blew a 19-point lead with the highest ranked team in the history of the tournament on KenPom, right? They were the most expected to win the tournament team ever, and they don't even get to the Final Four.
Well, that's a good point. That's a fair point. I mean,
if you're going to fire Huber for it, then you got to look at that guy, and he's choking something like this every year. Last year, he choked a round earlier, and he had the two best players on his team are now fighting it out for Rookie of the Year in the NBA, right? Knuppel and Cooper Flack.
Yeah, you have to say though that shot by Mullins. I mean, it was not an easy shot either.
Not an easy shot, but he did get we were talking about this last night. So he caught that pass, and he did get a little second to look at it.
Yeah, so, but he was deep.
Yeah, he was deep.
He was deep. That was the thing that got me. It was just like, okay, this is not like a 15-footer or 20-foot. He was deep, and it's like
it was 30 feet.
Yeah, he got a chance to look, but still, I mean, the pressure is there, and he was calm, and he sunk that shot, and I was like, amazing. So
yeah, that's right.
That put the madness in March Madness there.
Yeah, and like Kentucky, who was it? Kentucky was playing. They almost beat Kentucky. They made one. Santa Clara. Santa Clara made one like that from right by the sideline with 2 seconds left, and Kentucky came back down and scored from even deeper to win the game. So, people say that there's a lot of chalk this year, and there is a lot of chalk this year, but there's been a lot of upsets too. There's been a lot of shocking things happen in this tournament.
Yeah, there have been some very narrow escapes.
Yeah, and Will Wade back to LSU. I think that's great news.
Yeah. Yeah,
our general has returned
after a period of exile.
That's right, prison, as it were.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope, as always, you stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.
All righty.